Hello, in this tutorial we will learn how to use RapidMiner to mine association rules from a basket containing items. Now these baskets, the most common example is these are baskets of things bought by customers at a grocery store, but these baskets could be anything. A basket could be a session at a website, for example, and the items could be the web pages that were visited during that session. But the most common example that one uses here to teach this concept is a basket is really a shopping basket, a shopping cart, and people are putting grocery items in that basket. We will see how to mine these association rules in two steps. The first step is we will see how to extract what are called frequent item sets from the baskets, and there the concept of a support threshold will be important. And then we will see how to use these frequent item sets to extract association rules that meet a certain level of confidence. So let's take a quick look at our data set. Our data set consists of about 10,000 baskets or 10,000 transactions. And for each transaction, we have a list of the items that were bought. For example, in the second transaction, the customer bought tropical fruit, yogurt, and coffee. So from this raw data, from this baskets or these transactions, in this case, what we extract is frequent item sets. That's the first step. So these are collections of items that occur in the transactions with some frequency, and they have to meet this minimum level of support. This is a percentage, a number between 0 and 1. So only item sets that cross or are above this threshold in terms of their occurrence in the data set, they are extracted. Okay, so once this frequent item set is extracted, then from those we extract association rules. For example, you can see if you look at the second item set, butter implies yogurt and rice. That's an association rule that we could extract from that item set. But we will only extract rules, association rules, that meet a minimum level of confidence. Okay. So think of minimum support as a marginal probability and minimum confidence as a conditional probability, and the formulas for that you can see on the left hand side. So the support for an item set is the proportion of transactions in which that item set occurs. Okay, and the confidence is given the premise of the association rule. So you can see the denominator is the premise of the rule, and the numerator is still the count for the entire item set. So this confidence is a conditional probability. Given that a person bought butter, what is the likelihood they will also buy yogurt and rice? Whereas the support is a marginal probability. So with that, let me start up RapidMiner and get going with our model building process. So the first step, of course, is to bring in the data set. This is my groceries data set. And for the moment, let me just connect it to the results port just to show you something, the characteristics of the data set, and make a comment about it. So let me run this process. So in RapidMiner, when you're doing association rule mining, it accepts the basket information in a number of different formats. And when I show you the next operator, I will show you where you can read more details about it. But essentially, two major formats. It accepts three formats, but I'll just mention two of them. The first is where you have just a list of transactions, a list of baskets, and in each basket, the items are listed right one after the other. First item, second item, third item, and the remainder is all blank. Okay, so the number of items is the size of the largest basket, really. So this is one format in which the input can be provided to RapidMiner. The second other common format in which it is provided is that in the columns you have a list of items, all possible items that are there in the transactions, and then you have the list of transactions on the rows, and you just have a 0-1 matrix. So 0 and 1 tells you whether or not that's what is dummy coded way of inputting the variable. The third format is where you just have a linear list of the items that were bought, just one item per row. Okay, so those are three different formats in which the data can be inputted, and we will have more to say about that in a few minutes. So let's get back with the design. I can delete this link for the moment. So the first step, as you saw in the two slides that we just discussed, is to create frequent item sets. So only identify item sets that occur with some frequency. So the operator that RapidMiner has to do that is FP growth, is frequent pattern growth. So I drag and drop the operator in here, connect these two, okay? And we are still not, you can see this red here tells me that this operator has still not been specified properly. So I highlight this FP growth operator. And here you can see in the input format, there are 3 different formats in which you can input the raw data. And in our format, I just showed you a minute ago, the items were listed in separate columns. They are not dummy coded, okay? So as soon as I did that, as soon as I specified that particular format, you can see that alarm or the red indication, red flag went away, okay? So now, again, you can see that I have told RapidMiner that the criterion that I want to use in order to extract my item sets is support. There are a number of other, well, not number, you can also use frequency as a criterion, but support is a marginal probability, so it's a relative frequency. I would prefer to use support, that's the most common one. And the minimum support I'm specifying is 0.95. Okay, that's the default. So let's start there and see where that gets us. And okay, so here we have the make sure that this box which says find minimum number of item sets is unchecked. Otherwise, what will happen is if that box is checked, that find minimum number of item sets, what RapidMiner does is it dynamically changes this minimum support level to give you a certain number of item sets, okay? So I make sure for our purposes, for our learning purposes, make sure that this box is unchecked where it says find minimum number of item sets, okay? So let's see what the result would be. So I have 2 ports over here. I just want the frequent item sets. The first output port tells me the raw data itself in its native form, but I just want the frequent item set. So I connect the frequent item set port to the results, okay? So let's run, and you see it says no item sets found. And that's not surprising, because if you get back to design, you can see that this minimum support level is set at an unrealistically high level. So we are saying only find those item sets, those subsets of items that occur in 95% of the baskets or 95% of the transactions. And it's not surprising that you didn't find any subsets of that type, okay, or even a single item of that type. So let's keep dropping this minimum support level. Let's go to 0.8, run it, and still no item sets found. So let me get more aggressive. I drop it down to 0.4 and see if that gets us anything. Still no item sets found. Well, our basket, we have about 10,000 baskets in 10,000 transactions here in this data set. It's a very large data set, so we may need to drop this minimum support level even further. Let me drop it down to 0.1 and see where that gets us. So we have a few items. Here we have item sets that consist of only a single item, and you can see that it's cut off at about 0.1, okay? So what RapidMiner is telling us, only these single items meet your minimum support level of minimum level of support. So I'm going to try and drop this even further, just so that we get item sets that may have 2 or 3 items in them, so that we can derive some interesting rules, okay? So let me drop this minimum support level to 0.05 and see what we get. So you can see over here, RapidMiner has provided us with frequent item sets. The minimum size of the item set is 1 and the maximum size is 2. So we have a few item sets that have 2 items in them, okay, and this meets our minimum threshold level. Let me drop it just a tad more and see. So I'm saying find me all the item sets that are present in 2% of the transactions, and that, given how large our transaction set is, this may not be too bad. So let's run this. Okay, so we do have a few item sets that are of size 3, you can see over here. Let me just scroll down. Okay, so we have two item sets that are of size 3. Maybe I will drop the threshold just a little bit more so we get a few more item sets that are of size 3 in our screening process. Okay, so let me go back to design. I'll drop this to 0.01, so 1%. I run this and let's see how many we have of size 3. Well, we have quite a few of size 3 now. Okay, but I think you get the idea of how this frequent item sets works. So if you think of all possibilities, there are a huge number of item sets that are possible to be extracted from this transactions, a set of 10,000 transactions. And by putting this minimum support level of even 1%, we are screening out just a subset of those. And now from these frequent item sets that I have just shown you in the results, we will extract some rules. Okay, and the operator that RapidMiner provides for extracting the rules is called create association rule. So there's the operator. I bring it up and I drop it into the process panel. So the input to create association rules is frequent item sets. So remember, this output port from FP growth had generated the frequent item sets. I feed those frequent item sets into the create association rules operator. And it has two ports to be outputted. One, of course, is the item sets themselves. So I can look at those if I like. I've already seen them, so there may not be any need to look at those. But I'm really interested in other rules. Okay, what association rules are extracted. And if you go back to if you think back to the first two slides that I had shown you, there are a huge number of rules. It's combinatorially explosive, the number of rules that can be extracted from the frequent item set. So we set a threshold. We are saying only extract those rules that meet a minimum confidence of 0.8. By the way, there are other criteria that one can use to filter the rules that we see. The most common one is confidence, but there are some other ones. There's lift, there's conviction, there's gain. So there are some of these other criteria as well, but we will focus on confidence. And again, thinking back to the two slides that I showed you, support is a marginal probability and confidence is a support is a marginal probability and confidence is a conditional probability, conditional on the premise having been bought. So X implies Y. The confidence is the probability of Y given X. And we are saying that it has to be more than 0.8. That's the default minimum confidence level that's been set. So let's run this and see what we get. Okay. So the item sets, the frequent item sets, are what we saw in the previous iteration of the with the FP operator. So there's nothing has changed over there. So you can see you have lots of single items and you have some item sets of size 3. What's more interesting here for our purposes is what kind of association rules were generated. And it says no rules were found. Perhaps the easy conclusion, the obvious conclusion here is that we have set our confidence level way too high. Okay, so I need to start dropping the confidence level. So let me see, I drop it to 70%, and the association rules still say I couldn't find any rules. So I will get a little more aggressive in dropping the confidence level. So I'll drop it down to 40% and let's see what that gets us. Run it again. So we have some association rules here. Okay, so when we dropped it down to 40%, so let me just rescale the column width a little bit so we can see everything here. Okay, so we have our metrics. So let's take one rule, for example. Now, one of the rules that's been found is if a person buys yogurt and tropical fruit, there is a 42% probability, that is the conditional probability here, there is a 42% probability that the person will buy other vegetables. So again, if a person buys frozen vegetables, there is a 42% probability that they will also buy whole milk. So this support is the marginal probability of all these items occurring in the basket set, the set of transactions, and the confidence is the conditional probability. Okay, let's scroll down and see if there are some more For instance, it's here in Rule 42, it says, if a person bought other vegetables and tropical fruit, there is a 47% confidence that they will have that they will buy whole milk. Okay, so what do these rules? How do these rules help with business decision making? You can see that these rules can help you in first of all in terms of arranging your grocery. Where do you put which items? So items that are likely to be bought together, you might want to keep them close to one another so that when a person is shopping for one, they will see the other. Another opposite tactic that's been used is if the confidence level is very high, that is, let's say the confidence level is 90% for a particular rule, then those items you might want to keep them far apart in the grocery store, because that will force the customer, the consumer, to walk across the store in order to get from one item to the other to buy it. And in the process, they might buy other things. Some things might catch their eye and they might buy other things. Okay, so this is in the case of in a market consumer purchasing context. If your baskets were not really shopping carts, but let's say each basket is a session on a website, a visitor coming to a website and browsing through it, a browsing session. Your items could be the different web pages that you visited. And by building such rules, you get information like you can draw conclusions like if a person visits page X, they also visit page Y, or if they visit page X and Y, they also visit page Z. This kind of information can be useful in designing your website, at least the navigation or the relative pattern of navigation that you might want to do on the particular website. Coming back to this grocery example, I just told you how these rules can be used to influence the placement of items in the store. You can see how these kinds of rules can also be used to generate coupons for customers on the fly. So as they are buying things, perhaps on their cell phones, you might pop in a coupon for something which a rule suggests that they would also be inclined to buy. If these were computers that were being bought, you could use this to recommend to customers what else they might buy along with items, computer-related items that they might have bought. So in this, let me get back to the design of the process. So in this tutorial, I've shown you how to mine association rules from a basket of items. Those baskets could be anything really. And I've also shown you how the minimum support threshold and the minimum confidence threshold affect the generation of these frequent item sets and rules. So thank you for watching and thank you for your attention.